A man saved a little girl from an accident and fell into a coma. When he woke up, he discovered who the girl's mother was. Weston Hale, at 35, is a man who seemingly has it all, or at least that's what the world thinks. From the window of his spacious office, with a panoramic view of the city that symbolizes his success, he watches the urban hustle, which seems to reflect his own life, fast-paced, competitive, but empty. He has built an empire from scratch, earning the respect of his peers, the admiration of his employees, and the recognition of an entire industry. Yet the weight of his success has left him feeling hollow, a void that no amount of money or million-dollar contracts can fill. Despite everything he's achieved, there's a memory he can't shake: Serena, the only woman he ever truly loved and from whom he walked away to prioritize his career and ambitions. The relationship he thought he could move on from has left a scar that never healed. Sitting in his luxurious office, he wonders if his decision was right, if success justifies the emotional sacrifices he made along the way. It's in these reflective moments that he feels the weight of his choices the most, questioning what might have happened if he had chosen Serena over his career. After an intense business meeting, Weston decides to go for a walk through the city to clear his mind. It's his way of escaping the pressures of his life, even if just for a few minutes. As he strolls through the crowded streets, his mind drifts back to his relationship with Serena, to the dreams they once shared. The noise of the city and the sound of cars barely penetrate his thoughts. Suddenly, something jolts him from his reverie. In the distance, he sees a small figure running carelessly toward the street. A little girl, no older than 5, is darting toward the curb, completely unaware of the danger. At the same time, Weston notices a car speeding down the avenue, showing no signs of stopping in time. Adrenaline kicks in, and without thinking, his body reacts. He runs with all his might toward the girl, each second feeling like an eternity as the car barrels closer. At the last moment, he manages to push the girl out of the way, saving her from certain harm. But the car strikes him directly, and his body hits the ground with brutal force. The pain is overwhelming, but he doesn't have time to process it. As the world around him begins to blur, one image remains clear: the girl, safe and sound, away from danger. As he falls, a strange sense of relief washes over him. At least she's okay, he thinks. Slowly, everything goes dark. The screams of bystanders, the noise of cars, all fades until silence envelops him completely. Weston lies unconscious in the street while the little girl runs to the sidewalk, unhurt but visibly shaken. Passers-by gather around him, calling for emergency services. No one knows who this man is who, through his selfless act, saved a young girl from tragedy. What they also don't know is that this heroic act will lead him to face a much more complex fate than he could have ever imagined. Minutes later, the ambulance arrives, taking an unconscious Weston to the hospital. News of the accident quickly reaches Serena, the mother of Elowen, the girl Weston saved. Serena arrives at the scene just as they are taking Weston away in the ambulance. At first, she doesn't know who the man is that saved her daughter, but upon hearing that he is being taken to the hospital, she decides to follow to thank him. When Serena and Elowen arrive at the hospital, she discovers that the brave man who risked his life to save her daughter is Weston. The emotional impact is immediate. Memories of their relationship, of the life they once shared, flood her mind. It's been years since they separated, and she never imagined seeing him again, let alone in such a vulnerable, unconscious state, completely out of his control. Serena is frozen at the sight of Weston in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines monitoring his vital signs. She grips Elowen's hand tightly as fear and relief wash over her simultaneously. Unbeknownst to Weston, the girl he saved is his daughter. Serena looks at his face, and the reality of the moment hits her hard. Now, more than ever, she knows she will have to confront the decisions she made in the past. In the silent hospital room, Weston remains in a coma. His body is still, but his mind is a whirlwind of suppressed memories and emotions. In the darkness of his unconsciousness, Weston begins to relive the most significant moments of his life, especially those involving Serena. It's as if his subconscious is determined to remind him of what he tried so hard to forget over the years. He relives the first day he met Serena, her infectious laughter that captivated him from the start, the warmth of her presence, and the unconditional love they shared during the early years of their relationship, every smile, every deep conversation, the dreams they built together. But as these memories progress, he also begins to relive the pain of how everything changed. The happy days give way to silent arguments, to empty stares, and to emotional disconnection. In his coma, it's as if his mind is punishing him with the truth he always tried to avoid. His overwhelming ambition and obsession with success were what drove him away from Serena. He sees himself in his office, working long hours, ignoring Serena's calls, cancelling plans, and prioritizing contracts and meetings over their relationship. The love they once shared slowly eroded, consumed by his relentless desire to climb the corporate ladder. Everything feels so real, as if he's reliving every painful detail. Meanwhile, in the hospital waiting room, Serena sits next to Elowen, completely lost in her own thoughts. She watches her daughter play with a doll she brought to keep herself entertained, but Serena's mind is elsewhere. Every time she looks at Elowen, she feels a mix of pride and guilt. That little girl is her greatest joy, but also her biggest secret. Serena knows that the situation can't remain hidden much longer. Weston is still in a coma, but eventually he will wake up. And when he does, the truth she's kept for so many years will come to light. She can't stop thinking about how Weston will react when he finds out he has a daughter he never knew existed. Fear consumes her. Fear that he'll hate her for keeping Elowen from him. Fear that he'll try to take her away. And fear that Mrs. Gwendolen will step in with her power and influence. Serena also recalls her relationship with Weston, the good and the bad. She knows they both made mistakes, but the decision to leave and raise Elowen alone was the hardest she ever made. After their breakup, she decided that keeping Elowen away from the control and pressure of the powerful Hale family was what was best for her daughter. But now, with Weston here, right after saving her daughter without knowing who she was, Serena feels like fate is forcing her to confront the ghosts of her past. Lost in her thoughts, Ezekiel, the nurse who has known Serena for years, walks into the waiting room. He has always been there to offer his support, knowing how much Serena has had to handle on her own. Ezekiel has been in love with Serena since they met, but he's always respected the boundaries between them. However, since the accident, he's noticed that Serena is even more distant than usual, and it worries him. Ezekiel approaches with a kind smile, trying to ease the tension Serena clearly carries on her shoulders. "How's Elowen?" he asks gently, watching the little girl play, oblivious to the emotional storm her mother is facing. "She's fine. Thank you, Ezekiel. She doesn't really know what's going on," Serena replies, her eyes fixed on her daughter. Ezekiel sits beside Serena, aware that there's something else troubling her. His concern for her is evident, and while Serena appreciates it, she knows she can't share everything she's carrying inside with him. Still, Ezekiel can't help but try to get closer to her. "You know you can count on me if you need anything, right?" Ezekiel says, his voice soft and understanding. Serena nods, but her mind remains on Weston. Though Ezekiel has been a constant source of support, she knows her heart has always belonged to Weston, despite the pain he caused. The truth is, the emotional connection between her and Weston remains, even after all these years. At the other end of the hospital, Mrs. Gwendolen, Weston's mother, has arrived. The news of the accident shocked her, but her cold, controlling demeanor hasn't changed. From the moment she set foot in the hospital, her only concern has been maintaining control of the situation and, of course, over Weston. Clara never approved of Weston's relationship with Serena. She always saw Serena as a distraction, someone who didn't belong in the Hale world. When their relationship ended, Clara felt a quiet relief, confident that her son would continue on the path she deemed proper. But now, seeing Serena at the hospital and a little girl close to her, something inside Clara stirs. She looks at the child with curiosity, noticing features that seem familiar. The eyes, the shape of the smile. A feeling of suspicion starts to grow inside her. Clara is a sharp woman, and though she hasn't said anything yet, she's beginning to put the pieces together. She knows there's more to this situation, something Serena is hiding from her, and Clara is determined to find out what it is. Mrs. Gwendolen watches Elowyn from a distance, becoming more convinced with each passing moment that the girl is more than just a coincidence in Weston's life. Serena, meanwhile, feels trapped between the guilt of hiding the truth and the fear that the Hale family's control might once again threaten the peaceful life she's built with Elowyn. Since arriving at the hospital, Mrs. Gwendolen hasn't taken her eyes off Elowyn. Her sharp gaze examines every detail of the child. There's something unsettlingly familiar about her face. The eyes, the shape of her mouth, even her behavior stirs memories. While Clara can't yet confirm it, her instincts tell her that Elowyn might be more than just a little girl her son saved. Meanwhile, Serena tries to keep Elowyn occupied in the waiting room, fully aware of the attention Clara is paying to her daughter. Serena's heart races every time Clara looks their way, as if she could unravel the secret with just a glance. Serena knows time is running out. She can't keep hiding the truth for much longer, but the fear of losing her daughter paralyzes her. Clara, as always, is not one to leave questions unanswered. After a brief exchange of polite words with Serena, she decides to probe further. "Serena, it's good to see you here," Clara says, her voice as sharp as a dagger wrapped in velvet. "Though, I must admit, I'm surprised you're so concerned about Weston after all these years." Serena feels uneasy, but tries to stay calm. "It's the least I could do after everything," Serena responds, attempting to sound composed. "He saved my daughter." "Yes, a lovely girl," Clara remarks, glancing briefly at Elowyn, who is absorbed in her game. "She reminds me of someone, but I'm not sure who." Serena tenses, feeling the air grow heavier. Clara has always been manipulative, and now more than ever, Serena feels like she's being cornered. At the same time, Ezekiel, the nurse who has been by Serena's side since the accident, watches the tension rise between her and Mrs. Gwendolen. He knows the history between them and understands how hard it must be for Serena to face such an imposing woman, especially while Weston remains in a coma. Ezekiel decides to intervene, seizing a pause in the conversation. "Serena, why don't you take a break? I can look after Elowyn for a while," Ezekiel offers, with a compassionate smile. Serena looks at him gratefully, relieved at the chance to escape Clara's piercing gaze, even if just for a few minutes. "Thank you, Ezekiel. I appreciate it," Serena says, standing up and taking a deep breath as she walks down the hospital corridors. Ezekiel stays with Elowyn, who continues playing peacefully, unaware of the storm brewing around her. Though he's always been in love with Serena, Ezekiel knows she doesn't see him the same way. Still, he's determined to be the support she needs, no matter the outcome. Serena heads to the hospital cafeteria, needing a few moments to clear her mind. But even there, far from Clara, the memories of the past flood her thoughts. She can't stop thinking about how her life has become intertwined with Weston's once again, in a way she never expected. As she sips her coffee, her mind drifts back to the moment she discovered she was pregnant with Elowyn. It had been a devastating and magical moment at the same time. Weston and she had just broken up, and the words they exchanged in their last argument still cut like knives. Weston had been too focused on his career, making it clear he didn't have time for a family. One day you'll understand," he had said coldly when Serena tried to explain what she truly needed. His presence, his love, not empty promises. That day, Serena knew she had to leave, even though it hurt more than she could ever admit. But when she discovered she was pregnant, she knew she couldn't tell him. Weston had already chosen his career over her, and she didn't want him to do the same with Elowen. That decision has haunted her, especially now. Weston had changed Elowen's life by saving her, but he had no idea he had also saved his own daughter. Serena feels the weight of the secret she's kept for years pressing down on her. She knows she can no longer run from her past. As Serena reflects on her situation, Mrs. Gwendolen isn't wasting any time. In her mind, she's already begun crafting a plan. If her suspicions are correct, and Elowen is Weston's daughter, it would change everything. It would be an opportunity to strengthen the Hale legacy even further and ensure that the girl falls under her control, just like everything Clara touches. Clara decides to start digging. Discreetly, she approaches the nurses and hospital staff, playing the concerned grandmother who just wants to make sure everything is in order. Slowly, she begins gathering information about Elowen, her age, her family situation, and all the little details that might confirm her suspicions. Clara is methodical, and she knows that with enough patience, she'll uncover the truth. Back in Weston's room, Serena returns to sit by his side. The room is silent, broken only by the soft beeping of the machines monitoring his vital signs. As she watches him, the guilt begins to consume her. She doesn't know how much longer she can keep the secret. Elowen is a part of him, and sooner or later, Weston will have to know. But the fear paralyzes her. What will Weston do when he wakes up? Will he hate her for keeping their daughter a secret for so many years? Will he try to take Elowen away? Or worse, will he let Mrs. Gwendolen manipulate him? Just then, Ezekiel enters the room, interrupting her thoughts. "Are you okay?" he asks softly, aware of the emotional burden Serena is carrying. "I don't know," Serena responds, her voice heavy with anguish. "Every day, I feel like everything is about to fall apart." Ezekiel steps closer, taking her hand in a silent gesture of support. Although he knows his place in Serena's life is as a friend and confidant, he can't help but wish to be closer to her. Yet, he understands that Serena is too wrapped up in her feelings for Weston to see anything beyond them. As Serena grapples with her growing guilt and Mrs. Gwendolen continues her pursuit of the truth, the situation teeters on the brink of collapse. Clara's suspicions are becoming clearer, and the secret Serena has kept for years is on the verge of being exposed. Weston remains in a coma, but when he wakes up, the lives of everyone involved will be irrevocably changed. Weston may be unconscious, but his mind is far from at rest. In the depths of his coma, the memories he's suppressed for years resurface with painful clarity. He's trapped in a cycle of recollections from his relationship with Serena. Moments that were once filled with joy, but gradually became sources of conflict and pain. His first memory takes him back to the day he met Serena. Everything had seemed perfect. She was enchanting, with an energy that made him feel alive, and their love was the kind of connection he believed would last forever. They spent hours talking about their dreams, laughing and sharing intimate moments. Serena always supported him every step of the way, proud of his achievements and the man he was becoming. But Weston couldn't foresee what lay ahead. As the years passed, his professional life began to demand more and more of his time and energy. Weston found himself increasingly consumed by his ambition to build a business empire. The nights they used to spend together turned into long hours at the office. At first, Serena tried to understand, but as time went on, her patience began to wear thin. In one of these memories, Weston sees himself arriving late yet again to an important dinner with Serena. She was sitting alone in a restaurant, waiting, while the empty seat across from her seemed to reflect the growing distance between them. When he finally arrived, late and full of excuses about work, he saw the disappointment in Serena's eyes. "This isn't the first time, Weston," Serena said in a calm but sad tone. "I don't know if I'm second in your life or if I'm not even part of it at all." Caught in his business-driven mindset, Weston didn't fully grasp the weight of what Serena was saying. In his mind, he was working to build a future for the both of them, unaware that he was losing what truly mattered in the process. "You know I'm doing all of this for us," Weston replied, almost mechanically. "Just a little more time, and everything will be perfect." Serena remained silent, feeling an invisible barrier rise between them. The contracts, the meetings, the business trips, it all seemed more important to Weston than the love they once shared. Serena had tried to be strong, but in that moment, she realized that Weston's ambition would always take precedence over their relationship. The most painful memory takes him to the day Serena decided to leave. As usual, Weston was in his office, reviewing financial reports, when she walked in, her face serious yet determined. They had been drifting apart for months, their arguments growing more frequent, and their relationship was crumbling. "Weston, I can't do this anymore," Serena said, her voice breaking. "I'm not a priority for you, and I don't think I ever will be." Weston looked up from the papers, surprised by the hardness in Serena's tone. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, though deep down he already knew the answer. "I've been waiting for months, years, for things to change, but they're only getting worse. You always have a new goal, a new project, a new reason not to be here. I don't want to keep being a shadow in your life, Weston. I don't want to be the person who waits around when it's convenient for you." Weston tried to explain, to tell her that everything he did was for their future, but Serena had already made up her mind. "I love you, Weston, but I can't keep living like this. I can't stay in a relationship where I'm the only one present. I'm leaving," she said, and those words echoed in Weston's mind like a bell tolling. That was the last time he saw her before they parted ways for good. At that moment, blinded by his ambition, Weston let Serena walk away, convinced that his success would make up for it. But now, in his unconscious state, those memories torment him, forcing him to realize the mistake he made in letting go of the only true love he'd ever had. As Weston relives those moments in his mind, Serena, sitting by his hospital bed, is also consumed by memories of their breakup. Guilt and pain intertwine as she confronts the consequences of her decisions. She remembers the day she discovered she was pregnant with Elowin, just a few weeks after their separation. At the time, Serena was heartbroken, but she knew Weston wasn't ready to be a father. He had already made it clear that his life was centered around his business, and she couldn't bear the thought of Elowin growing up feeling like a burden in her father's life, the same way she had begun to feel herself. Serena decided to raise Elowin on her own, keeping her far away from the suffocating control of the Hale family. She couldn't allow Mrs. Gwendolen to try and mold her daughter's life as she had done with Weston. It was a painful decision, but Serena always believed it was the best choice for Elowin. However, now that Weston was back in her life, albeit unconscious, doubts and fears overwhelmed her. Had she made the right choice? Or did Elowin deserve to know her father from the start? Elsewhere in the hospital, Mrs. Gwendolen continues her investigation. After discreetly questioning the staff, she has gathered more information about Elowin. Upon learning that the girl's age aligns perfectly with Weston and Serena's breakup, Clara's suspicions are confirmed. Though she doesn't have concrete proof yet, in her mind, she's convinced that Elowin is her granddaughter. Clara has always been a woman of action, and she has no intention of sitting idly by. If the child is indeed part of the Hale family, then her place is with them, under her control. She won't allow Serena to keep hiding the girl, and certainly not to raise her outside the family legacy. Serena sits by Weston's bed, staring at his motionless face. The memories of their separation fill her with pain, but also regret. She knows that sooner or later, she will have to confess the truth. Elowin is his daughter. But how will Weston react when he wakes up? Meanwhile, Mrs. Gwendolen is more determined than ever to uncover the truth and claim Elowin for the Hale family. The secrets of the past are about to come to light. After days of uncertainty, Weston's body finally begins to show signs of recovery. At first, it's only small movements, a blink, a slight twitch of his hand. For Serena, who has spent every day by his side, these tiny gestures are like a spark of hope in the darkness. She's feared this moment as much as she's longed for it, knowing that when Weston wakes, she'll have to confront a truth she's kept hidden for years. The medical team confirms what Serena has been waiting for. Weston is waking up. The process is slow but unmistakable. His awareness is gradually returning, along with a wave of confusion and pain. Everything around him feels hazy, as though his mind is still trapped in a fog that refuses to clear completely. Finally, Weston's eyes open fully, though his vision remains blurred. The first sound he hears is the soft laughter of a child. Next to him, playing in the corner of the room, is Elowen, completely unaware of the significance of the moment. At first, Weston doesn't recognize the little girl, but there's something oddly familiar about her, something he can't quite place. Serena watches from the doorway, her heart pounding. She's kept Elowen by her side throughout this ordeal, but now that Weston is awake, she knows the time to face the truth is fast approaching. Weston tries to speak, but his voice is hoarse, barely a whisper. Who is she?" he asks, his throat dry, his mind still clouded with confusion. Elowen, oblivious to the question, continues playing, but Serena knows the question isn't for her daughter, it's for her. Slowly she approaches Weston's bedside, the weight of years and her secret pressing heavily on her chest. "Weston, her name is Elowen," Serena replies, her voice trembling, but she doesn't offer more. She's not ready to reveal the entire truth yet. Weston looks at her, puzzled. The name means nothing to him, yet he feels a strange tug at his heart as he watches the little girl. Something deep inside tells him there's more to this than Serena is letting on. Days pass, and although Weston is still weak, his mind becomes clearer. However, the question of Elowen lingers, gnawing at him. Serena's presence at his side is comforting, but it also unsettles him. Their unspoken exchanges are heavy with tension, but the answers he seeks continue to elude him. One morning, while Serena and Elowen are out of the room, Mrs. Gwendolen enters with her usual air of authority. The sight of her son, no longer hooked up to tubes and machines, gives her a sense of relief, but her focus has shifted. Clara has been observing Elowen closely, convinced the girl is more than a coincidence. "Weston," Clara says, sitting down beside him, "now that you're feeling better, we need to talk about something important." Weston turns to her, still recovering from the haze. He knows his mother doesn't waste time on trivial matters. "What is it, Mother?" he asks, his voice still rough. "It's about that girl, Elowen. Don't you see what's obvious?" Clara looks him straight in the eyes. "She's your daughter." The statement hits Weston like a sledgehammer. His mind takes a few moments to process what he's just heard, but when it does, the impact is overwhelming. His daughter, the girl he saved, the one who's been playing innocently by his side, his daughter. "That's impossible," he replies, incredulous. "Think about it," Clara insists. "Her age, her looks. Serena has been hiding this from you all along." Just then, Serena returns to the room, just in time to hear Clara's final accusation. Fear grips her immediately. Mrs. Gwendolen, as always, has struck straight at the heart of the issue, exposing what Serena had most dreaded. Her secret is teetering on the brink of exposure, but she hadn't wanted it to come out this way, with Clara controlling the narrative. "Serena," Weston says, his voice tense, his eyes locked on hers. "Is it true? Is Elowen my daughter?" The silence that follows his question is deafening. Serena feels the weight of the world on her shoulders, but she can no longer hide. She takes a deep breath, knowing this is the moment of truth. "Yes, Weston," Serena whispers, her voice barely audible. "Elowen is your daughter." The words hang in the air, heavy with years of secrets, pain, and regret. Weston's face shifts from disbelief to hurt and then to barely contained anger. So many years, so many lost moments, and now he's faced with the reality that he's been kept from his own daughter's life. Serena's revelation hits Weston with a force he can hardly describe. He feels betrayed, not just by Serena, but by life itself. He spent years chasing success, thinking he was building something important, only to realize he had lost the most precious thing, his daughter. "Why didn't you tell me?" Weston asks, his voice cracking with a mix of sorrow and rage. "Why did you keep her from me all this time?" Serena struggles to find the words, but nothing seems adequate to explain what she's done. "I didn't want Elowen to grow up in the same world as you, with your mother controlling everything," Serena says, tears filling her eyes. "I knew you weren't ready to be a father. You weren't even ready to be in a relationship. Your whole world was your work, Weston." Weston nods slowly, processing what Serena has said. Part of him understands her reasoning, but another part, the part that has been denied years of memories with his daughter, can't help but feel angry. The silence between them is thick with tension, broken only by the soft sound of Elowen's breathing as she continues playing, unaware of the devastating conversation taking place around her. "This isn't just about me, Serena," Weston says finally, his voice low but filled with emotion. "It's about Elowen. You didn't have the right to make that decision for both of us. She deserved to know her father." Serena lowers her head, knowing Weston is right, but terrified of what comes next. Her deepest fear is that Weston will want to take Elowen away, or worse, that Mrs. Gwendolen will use her power to manipulate the situation in her favor. Weston remains silent, his mind overwhelmed by a whirlwind of pain and resentment. On one hand, he wants to yell at Serena, demand answers. On the other, he feels a deep urge to protect Elowen, the daughter he unknowingly saved. Meanwhile, Mrs. Gwendolen watches the scene unfold, already calculating her next move. She has the confirmation she needed, and now her goal is clear: claim Elowen as part of the Hale legacy. The days following Weston's awakening are tense, filled with unspoken emotions. The revelation that Elowen is his daughter has changed everything, not just for Weston, but for Serena and Mrs. Gwendolen as well. Though Weston's physical strength returns, emotionally, he is shattered. He feels betrayed by Serena, but most of all, he feels the crushing weight of the years he's lost with Elowen, the little girl he unknowingly saved. Weston struggles to process all that has happened. Every time he sees Elowen playing, laughing, or even sitting quietly, a mixture of love and regret swells inside him. The desire to protect her grows stronger each day, but so does his resentment towards Serena for keeping Elowen a secret for so long. In his mind, the void left by his absence as a father feels increasingly unbearable. On the other hand, Serena is more frightened than ever. Though she always knew this moment would come, she never imagined it would be this devastating. She has tried to explain her actions, but every word feels insufficient. The fear that Weston or Mrs. Gwendolen will try to take Elowen from her haunts her day and night. Though the situation is unbearable, Serena continues to fight to keep her relationship with Elowen intact. Weston, however, doesn't want to act impulsively. Despite his pain and confusion, he knows he can't suddenly force his way into Elowen's life without considering her feelings. Determined not to repeat past mistakes, Weston begins to approach his daughter slowly. Although their relationship is tentative and cautious at first, Elowen's innocent and curious nature soon draws her toward him. One afternoon, while Serena is out of the room, Weston finds himself alone with Elowen. At first, the little girl is shy, but Weston's gentle kindness begins to break the ice. "Do you like puzzles?" Weston asks with a soft smile, pointing to one on the table beside his bed. Elowen looks at him curiously and shyly nods. "I love them," Elowen responds as she moves closer to start working on the puzzle. As they work together, Weston feels an undeniable bond forming with his daughter. Despite the years of separation, there is something natural between them, as if they were always meant to find each other. "You know, you're very brave, just like your mom," Weston says softly. Elowen looks up at him with a small smile, unaware of the deep connection they share. With every passing moment, Weston feels as though he's reclaiming something he never knew he had lost. Meanwhile, Mrs. Gwendolen continues to watch the situation closely. For her, the revelation that Elowen is her granddaughter has sparked a new mission: to bring the girl into the Hale family at all costs. Clara sees Elowen as a key piece to solidify the family legacy, and she has no intention of letting Serena continue to control the child's life. One day, Clara confronts Weston privately in the hospital room. "Weston, you can't let Serena dictate how Elowen's life should be," Clara says, her voice carrying its usual authoritative tone. "That girl is a Hale, and she deserves everything that comes with it." Weston, still grappling with his own emotions, looks at his mother coldly. "Elowen is my daughter, not a tool for your plans, Mother," he replies sharply. "I won't let you use her for your own interests." But Clara doesn't back down. She has always exerted strong influence over Weston, and even though he now seems to be pulling away from her control, she is determined to press forward with her agenda. Clara begins plotting how to use the law to get what she wants: custody of Elowen. Days later, the tension between Weston and Serena reaches a breaking point. Though they have both been trying to handle the situation as best they can, their repressed emotions finally come to the surface. Serena, afraid that Weston might take Elowen away, confronts him before things spiral further out of control. "What are you going to do, Weston?" Serena asks, a mix of anguish and determination in her voice. "Are you going to fight for Elowen? Are you going to do what your mother wants and try to take my daughter away from me?" Weston stares at her, shocked by her direct question, but also angry at the implication. "I don't want to take Elowen away from you, Serena," he responds, his voice laden with emotion. "But you can't expect me to stand on the sidelines after everything I've just learned. I'm her father. I deserved to know from the start." Serena feels tears threaten to spill. She knows Weston is right, but she also knows everything she did was to protect her daughter. "I did it to protect her from your mother, Weston. I knew Clara would try to control everything, and I couldn't let Elowen grow up under that pressure," Serena says, her voice trembling. "But I never wanted it to end like this. Elowen needs you in her life, but I can't lose her." Weston steps closer, his tone softening. "I don't want to take Elowen away from you. I'm not here to steal your child, Serena," he says firmly. "But she's my daughter too, and I deserve to be in her life. I don't know how we'll make this work, but I want Elowen to have both her parents. I'm not going to fight you. I don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past." Serena looks at him, surprised. Although she still feels fear, Weston's words bring a slight sense of relief. For the first time in a long while, she sees in him the ability to make decisions driven by love rather than control or ambition. Despite Weston's reassurances, Mrs. Gwendolen hasn't given up on her plan. She is preparing for a legal battle, determined to claim Elowen for the Hale family. Clara has already contacted her lawyers and is ready to proceed with a custody case, arguing that Serena kept Elowen from her father and from her rightful place in the family. Weston, though he's promised not to fight Serena for custody, feels the pressure from his mother. He knows that if he doesn't act soon, Clara will take control, and everything he has worked to rebuild with Serena and Elowen could crumble. While Weston promises Serena he won't fight for Elowen's custody, he knows in his heart that he is caught between two forces: his love for his daughter and his mother's manipulation. The tension continues to grow, and although Weston and Serena try to find a path toward reconciliation, Mrs. Gwendolen is ready to strike her final blow. The future of Elowen hangs in the balance, and the conflict between Weston and his mother is about to reach a point of no return. Days have passed since Weston promised Serena he wouldn't try to take Elowen from her, but the peace is only superficial. Despite his efforts to stay out of the conflict, Weston knows that Mrs. Gwendolen is preparing a more severe and decisive move. Clara has been in contact with her legal team, and though Weston has made it clear he doesn't want a court battle, he knows his mother won't stop until she gets what she wants: custody of Elowen, ensuring that the girl grows up under the Hale control. Clara, always calculating and astute, has gathered a legal team ready to do whatever it takes to win. She has portrayed Elowen as a child, deprived of her inheritance, her father, and her rightful place in a powerful family. The legal documents are prepared, and Clara is ready to initiate the custody battle, convinced she can take Elowen from Serena's arms. Meanwhile, Serena begins to feel the weight of the looming threat. Clara's stares whenever they cross paths at the hospital are more intimidating, and though Weston has promised not to fight, Serena fears everything will change if Clara manages to take control. Ezekiel, who has been watching from the sidelines, continues to support Serena, but he knows he can't intervene in her inner struggle. One morning, as Serena picks up Elowen after a medical checkup, she receives a letter. Upon opening it, her world crumbles beneath her feet. It's a legal notice. Mrs. Gwendolen has initiated a lawsuit to gain custody of Elowen, claiming that Serena has kept the girl away from her father and from her true family. Serena knows that if the case goes to court, Clara's resources are practically limitless. Ezekiel, seeing Serena's distressed state, takes her to a nearby cafe, trying to calm her down. "I can't lose her, Ezekiel. I can't let Clara take her," Serena says, her voice breaking. "I'll do whatever it takes, but I can't let Elowen grow up under that woman's control." Ezekiel watches her, his heart heavy with concern. He knows he can't change the situation, but he's determined to do everything in his power to support her. "You're not alone in this, Serena." And Weston, he seems like he truly wants to be on the right side. Ezekiel replies gently. Maybe it's time to trust him. At the hospital, Weston receives the news of his mother's legal move. At first, he's paralyzed by shock. Although he knew Clara was planning something, he never imagined she would take such drastic steps without his consent. Furious, he storms into his mother's room. "What are you doing, Mother?" Weston asks, his voice controlled but laced with anger. "I told you I didn't want to fight Serena for Elowen." Mrs. Gwendolen, ever unflappable, looks at him with a cold smile. "I'm doing what's best for the girl, Weston. Serena has kept her away from you and her true family. Elowen deserves the Hale name, to grow up with the resources and education only we can provide. You can't let that woman continue to control our granddaughter's life," Clara says, her voice as cold and calculating as ever. Weston feels trapped. He knows his mother has always been a relentless force, and going against her won't be easy. But at the same time, he's not willing to let Serena lose Elowen because of Clara's ambitions. Deep down, Weston knows that the only way to protect his daughter is to distance himself from his mother's control. "This has to stop, Mom. I won't let you use Elowen to fulfill your ambitions," Weston says firmly. "If you go through with this, you'll lose more than just custody of a little girl. You'll lose me too." Clara looks at him, stunned. Though her relationship with Weston has always been strained, she's never felt him challenge her so directly before. "You're making a serious mistake, Weston. You can't let your emotions cloud your judgment," Clara responds, trying to regain control. "If you don't take charge of the situation, Serena will take advantage of you." But Weston, now seeing things more clearly, has a different perspective. "The only mistake I made was letting work and control pull me away from the people who truly mattered," he replies. "This time, I won't let you destroy what I'm trying to rebuild with Elowen and Serena." That evening, Weston calls Serena to talk. They meet at the hospital, in a dimly lit hallway, where the tension in the air is palpable. Weston knows what he's about to say could change everything. "Clara has filed a legal case for custody of Elowen," Weston says, getting straight to the point. Serena feels her knees weaken, but she stands her ground. She already knew, but hearing it from Weston makes it even more real. "And what are you going to do, Weston?" Serena asks, her voice steady but filled with fear. "Are you going to support her in this?" Weston takes a deep breath and shakes his head. "No, I won't fight you, Serena," he says, his voice softer now. "I want to be part of Elowen's life, but I won't let my mother use her as a pawn to control everything. I'm here to fight for what truly matters, my daughter and her happiness. I don't want to take Elowen away from you, Serena. I want us to find a way to be a family." Weston's words are sincere, and for the first time, Serena feels she can trust him. Although the wounds of the past are still fresh, there's something in Weston's voice that brings her a sense of calm. "I don't know how we're going to do this," Serena replies, her eyes brimming with tears. "But if you're really willing to leave Clara out of this, then I'm willing to try." The next day, Weston makes a decision he never thought he'd be able to make. He meets with his mother's lawyers and makes it clear that he will not support the case for Elowen's custody. He demands that the charges be dropped, making it clear that he will not allow his mother to use her influence to destroy his relationship with Serena and Elowen. When Mrs. Gwendolyn hears of her son's decision, she is devastated. For the first time, she realizes she has lost control over Weston, control she always believed was unshakable. Although she tries to convince him once more, Weston stands firm. "This is my time, Mother. It's my life, and you won't dictate what I do with it, or with my daughter." Clara, defeated, has no choice but to accept her son's decision. Though her pride is wounded, she knows that if she keeps pushing, she risks losing Weston completely. Weston stands at the door of Elowen's room, watching as she quietly plays. Serena, beside him, looks at him with a mix of relief and hope. They've won an important battle, but they both understand that the real challenge lies ahead, rebuilding the trust and love they once shared. For the first time in years, Weston and Serena feel there's a real chance to become a family, free from Mrs. Gwendolyn's controlling shadow. But while they've won this fight, they both know that the road to reconciliation is still filled with obstacles. With the threat of custody temporarily halted, the tension at the hospital begins to ease. Serena and Weston have stood united in their decision to protect Elowen from Mrs. Gwendolyn's influence. However, even though the legal battle seems to be over, their personal emotions remain complicated. Serena is still grappling with the guilt of having hidden Elowen's existence from Weston, while Weston is trying to process the betrayal and regret over the years he's lost. Although they both agree that Elowen is the most important thing, the scars of their separation still linger. The possibility of a full reconciliation is there, but neither of them is sure how to move forward. Weston has been spending more time with Elowen, and slowly, their relationship is beginning to strengthen. However, Elowen still doesn't fully understand the true connection between them. While she knows that Weston saved her, she hasn't grasped what role he plays in her life. One afternoon, while Serena goes to grab some food, Weston is left alone with Elowen in the hospital park. Sitting on a bench, he watches his daughter playing with other girls. A wave of emotions washes over him. The unconditional love he already feels for Elowen, mixed with the sorrow of all the moments he missed out on. After a few minutes, Elowen runs up to him, her face lit by an innocent smile. "Why do you always come to see me?" Elowen asks, her voice filled with the innocent curiosity of a child. Weston, still unsure how to explain everything to his daughter, kneels beside her and smiles tenderly. "Because you're very special to me," he says, his voice filled with emotion. Elowen looks at him with her big, inquisitive eyes, as if trying to understand something far beyond her grasp. "Are you my friend?" she finally asks. Weston feels a pang in his heart. He can't reveal the whole truth yet, but he knows the time is approaching. Gently, he strokes Elowen's hair and nods. "Yes, I'm your friend, but also something more," he says, hinting at what's to come. As Weston strengthens his bond with Elowen, Serena continues to wrestle with her own fears. Though their relationship is improving, she still worries about what might happen if things become too complicated. She keeps wondering whether Weston is truly willing to leave his corporate life behind for their daughter, or if he will eventually fall back under Mrs. Gwendolyn's influence. Ezekiel, though emotionally more distant now, remains her confidant. One day, while they're having coffee in the hospital cafeteria, Serena finally opens up about her concerns. "Ezekiel, I don't know if I can fully trust Weston. I know he's changed, but I'm scared that one day he'll realize he can't live a quiet life and fall back into his old patterns," Serena confesses, her gaze lost in her cup of coffee. Ezekiel listens carefully, his heart heavy. "It's understandable that you're afraid, Serena. A lot has happened between you two, but Weston seems genuine in his desire to change. Maybe what you both need now is time, to see if he's truly committed to Elowen and to you," Ezekiel replies, always careful not to cross the line that separates him from being just a friend. Serena nods, though uncertainty still lingers in her heart. She knows Elowen's well-being is her priority, but she also realizes she can't ignore her own feelings. Despite Weston's rejection of her plans, Mrs. Gwendolyn hasn't given up. Determined to push forward with her vision for the family, Clara makes one final move, confronting Serena directly. One afternoon, while Serena is alone at the hospital, Clara approaches her. The tension between them is palpable from the first moment. "Serena, can we talk?" Clara says, her tone icy and calculated. Serena immediately feels uncomfortable, but decides to listen. "I have nothing to say to you, Clara. You already know how I feel about all of this," Serena responds, trying to stay calm. Clara looks at her with a forced smile, clearly irritated by Serena's defiance. "I know you think you're protecting Elowen, but you're mistaken. I want what's best for her, just like you. What you don't understand is that Elowen belongs to a powerful family. If she stays with you, she'll be wasting a future full of opportunities. You can't offer her what the Hale family can," Clara says, her voice growing sharper. Filled with restrained anger, Serena responds firmly. "Elowen is not a tool for your ambitions, Clara. She's a little girl who needs love, not a life dictated by your rules and expectations. I won't let you ruin her life like you did with Weston." Clara, stung by Serena's words, tries to maintain her composure, but the coldness in her eyes reveals she's losing control. "You're making a huge mistake, Serena. Weston might be on your side now, but eventually he'll see things my way. And when that happens, it will be too late for you," Clara says before walking away, leaving Serena trembling with rage. After the confrontation with Clara, Weston knows it's time to make a definitive choice. He can't keep living between the past and the present, torn between his mother and his family. He's seen how his ambition and his mother's influence destroyed his relationship with Serena in the past, and now he's more determined than ever not to repeat those mistakes. That night, in the hospital room, Weston sits beside Serena. She watches him in silence, sensing that something important is about to happen. "I spoke with my mother," Weston finally says, breaking the silence. "I made it clear that I won't go along with her plans, and I've also made a decision about what I want to do from now on." Serena looks at him, expectant, but also fearful of what he might say. "I'm going to leave the company," Weston says, his voice calm and sure, surprising Serena. "I can't keep living a life that pulls me away from the people I love. I've spent too much time missing important moments. I want to be there for Elowen. I want to rebuild what we lost." Weston's words feel like a promise. Serena, who never expected to hear such a thing from him, feels a mix of relief and doubt. "Are you sure about this, Weston?" she asks, her voice trembling. "It's your life, your career. Are you really willing to give it all up?" Weston nods firmly. "Yes, I'm sure." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," Weston replies. "I don't want to be the man who sacrifices everything for success anymore. I want to be a good father, and I want you and Elowen in my life, if there's still a chance for that." Serena, still shocked by Weston's decision, feels her fear and uncertainty begin to dissolve slowly. There's still much to resolve between them, but for the first time in years, they both sense that reconciliation is possible. Weston has made a crucial choice to leave the past behind and start a new life, dedicated to his daughter and perhaps to Serena. Weston has made a firm decision to walk away from his business empire and from the control Mrs. Gwendolyn has exerted over his life for years. He has chosen to prioritize what truly matters, his relationship with Elowen and Serena. However, while Weston has sacrificed his career to be a better father and partner, the conflict with his mother is far from over. Serena feels like things are finally starting to improve. Though she's still uncertain about what the future holds with Weston, his words and actions have begun to restore the trust that was broken years ago. Elowen, too, has started to grow closer to Weston. While the little girl still doesn't fully understand their connection, her bond with him strengthens each day. Weston is determined to be a loving and constant presence in his daughter's life, and that's what matters most to Serena. However, Mrs. Gwendolyn is not ready to accept the new path Weston has chosen. Her hold over him has crumbled, but she remains convinced that she knows what's best. To Clara, Elowen belongs to the Hale family, and Serena is simply an obstacle in the girl's future. Frustrated by Weston's decision to leave the company and distance himself from her control, Clara makes one final, desperate move. She approaches Elowen directly. One day, while Serena is in a medical meeting and Weston is away handling personal matters, Clara seizes the opportunity to find Elowen alone. The little girl is playing in the hospital's common area when Clara sits beside her, offering her an expensive, flashy toy. "Hello, dear," Clara says in a softly calculated tone. "Do you know who I am? I'm your daddy's mum. My name is Clara." Elowen, though polite, feels uncomfortable around the woman. She doesn't understand why Clara is so eager to talk to her, but out of respect, she plays along. "Hello," Elowen responds, glancing at the toy Clara offers. "I've heard so many wonderful things about you," Clara continues. "You must be a very special girl. You know, your father comes from a big, powerful family, and you're part of that family too. Being a Hale means so many important things. You could have a life full of luxury and opportunities, everything you could ever want." Elowen looks at her, confused, not fully understanding what Clara is saying. To her, it all seems a bit strange, as if the woman is trying to convince her of something she doesn't quite grasp. "But I'm happy with my mom and dad," Elowen responds, her innocence untouched. At that moment, Serena returns to the hospital and sees Clara talking to Elowen. Seeing the scene from a distance, she feels a surge of anger and fear. Serena knows how manipulative Clara can be and is determined not to let her influence her daughter. She quickly approaches, interrupting the conversation before Clara can say more. "Clara, what are you doing?" Serena asks, her voice filled with a mix of fury and protectiveness. "You have no right to approach Elowen without my permission." Clara, maintaining her composure, stands up gracefully. "I was just having a chat with my granddaughter. After all, she is part of my family, Serena. You can't keep her away from her true roots forever," Clara says with an air of superiority. Serena kneels down, taking Elowen's hand and holding her close. "I won't let you use Elowen for your power games, Clara. She's not a pawn in your life. She's my daughter, and she deserves a childhood filled with love, not control," Serena replies firmly. Clara's gaze turns cold. "And what kind of life do you think you can give her, Serena? A life of mediocrity, far from the opportunities she could have. Elowen is a Hale, and whether you like it or not, she's entitled to everything our family can offer her," Clara insists, her tone growing sharper. Just then, Weston arrives at the hospital after his appointment. Seeing his mother confronting Serena and Elowen in the midst of a heated exchange, his anger boils over. He strides forward, positioning himself between Serena and Clara, and glares at his mother with barely contained fury. "What are you doing, Mum?" Weston asks, his voice tense. "I told you to stay out of Elowen's life." Clara, attempting to keep control, responds calmly. I'm protecting my granddaughter, Weston. You don't understand what you're sacrificing by keeping her away from her heritage. Weston looks at her, disappointed, but this time there's no room for hesitation. No, Mom. You don't understand what I'm gaining. I'm building a life with my daughter and Serena. A life that's not about money, power, or control, but about love and being present. And I won't let you destroy that, he says firmly. This is my family, and I won't allow you to keep manipulating the situation. Mrs. Gwendolen, realizing she has lost all her influence over Weston, can't help but feel defeated. Her face reveals a mix of sadness and resignation, though she clings to her pride. You're making a huge mistake, Weston, Clara says, her voice tinged with bitterness. When you realize everything you've lost, there will be no going back. Weston doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he takes Eloan's hand and smiles softly at her. Then, turning to Serena, his eyes full of determination, he speaks. I've lost so much in my life, but I won't lose my daughter or the chance to be the man I should have been from the start, he finally says. This is my decision, and there's no turning back. Clara, with no other choice, turns and walks away, leaving Weston, Serena, and Eloan standing in the hallway. Her departure marks the end of her control over her son's life, though the cost has been high. She has lost not only her granddaughter, but her son as well. With Clara gone, the atmosphere at the hospital feels lighter. For the first time in a long while, Serena and Weston feel like they have regained control of their lives. Although the journey to reconciliation has been difficult and filled with obstacles, they are now determined to move forward together. That night, as the three of them sit in Eloan's room, Weston speaks to his daughter with a sincerity he's never shown before. Eloan, there's something I need to tell you, Weston begins, looking her in the eyes. I'm your dad. Eloan looks at him in surprise, but also with curiosity. Though the idea is new to her, something in Weston's voice reassures her. Are you really my dad? Eloan asks, her eyes wide with wonder. Weston nods, tears in his eyes. Yes, I am. And even though I haven't always been here, I want you to know that I will always take care of you. I love you more than I can say, and I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me. With a shy smile, Eloan moves closer and wraps her arms around him tightly. I love you, Dad, she says softly. Weston holds her close, feeling like he is finally beginning to mend what time and wrong choices had broken. With Mrs. Gwendolen out of their lives and the truth revealed to Eloan, Weston and Serena feel that they finally have a real chance to build a life together. Though the past still lingers, the future seems brighter, and the family they once thought impossible is now closer to becoming a reality. After weeks of tension and conflict, peace has finally arrived for Weston, Serena, and Eloan. Mrs. Gwendolen, defeated, has stopped interfering, and for the first time in a long while, Weston and Serena can breathe easily. Life at the hospital has also changed. The daily visits have become more joyful, and the relationship between Weston and Eloan has blossomed into something beautiful and genuine. Eloan has accepted Weston as her father, and though she's still processing the changes in her life, she feels safe and loved. Serena, too, has begun to lower the walls she built over the years. While the fear of being hurt still lingers, she has seen Weston's commitment to leaving his past behind and building something better, not just for her, but for Eloan as well. After leaving the hospital, Weston makes a final decision: to sell the company he once built. What was once his greatest pride now represents everything he lost along the way. Though selling his empire is a symbolic step, to him, it means freeing himself from the chains of ambition that destroyed his relationship with Serena and kept him away from his daughter. Weston has begun exploring new possibilities. Instead of focusing on business success, he's decided to pursue simpler, more personal projects that allow him to spend more time with Eloan. Serena, amazed by Weston's transformation, starts to see him as the man she always wished he'd become, present, humble, and willing to put his family first. One day, as they're at the park with Elowen, Serena watches Weston play with their daughter. Elowen's laughter fills the air as Weston chases her, and in that moment, Serena feels the weight of years of heartache dissolve. She's witnessing the future she never thought she could have, one where Weston is no longer the cold, distant man who prioritized work above all else. A few days later, Weston asks Serena to accompany him to a special place. Intrigued, she agrees. They arrive at a small lookout with a breathtaking view of the city. It's the place they used to visit when they were younger, before success and ambition came between them. "This place has always reminded me of you," Weston begins, smiling nostalgically. "I avoided it for years because it made me think of everything I lost because of my decisions. But now, I want this place to represent something new." Serena looks at him, curiosity and emotion in her eyes. "Weston, everything has been happening so fast. I'm not sure if I'm ready for more," she says, her tone honest but hopeful. Weston nods, understanding her hesitation. He has spent so much time hurting the people he loves that he knows Serena needs time. But he also knows he doesn't want to lose this second chance. "I'm not asking you to make a decision right now," he responds gently. "I just want you to know that I'm here, ready to start over. I want the three of us to have a life together, a life that isn't defined by the past, but by what we can build in the future." Tears fill Serena's eyes. For years she had dreamed of hearing those words, but she never thought this moment would come. Weston has changed, and what surprises her most is that he's done it for them, for Elowen, and for her. "I don't know what the future holds for us, Weston, but I'm willing to try," Serena replies, offering him a shy smile. "I want to see if we can be the family we once dreamed of." Moved by her words, Weston takes her hand and smiles. With the decision to leave the past behind, Weston and Serena begin planning their new life together. It won't be easy, but both are committed to working for Elowen's well-being and for the relationship they once let slip away. They decide to move to a smaller house, far from the bustle of the city, to give Elowen a peaceful childhood, away from the constant noise of the corporate world. On moving day, Elowen, filled with excitement, runs through the garden of their new home, brimming with curiosity and energy. Serena and Weston watch her from a distance, both feeling a mix of relief and happiness. The life they are building is different from what they once imagined in their youth, but it is undoubtedly better. Although Mrs. Gwendolen has stopped interfering, Weston decides to visit her one day. He knows the conflict with his mother has left deep wounds, but he also feels it's important to set clear boundaries for the future. When he arrives at the family home, Clara greets him coldly, but she can't hide the sadness in her eyes. She's lost control over Weston, and she knows it. Despite her strong character, Clara always wanted what was best for her son, though her methods drove a wedge between them. "I know you don't agree with the decisions I've made, Mom, but it's my life," Weston says, his tone firm yet compassionate. "I want you to be part of Elowen's life, but only if you accept that you can't control what we do." Clara looks at him, finally realizing that she has lost the battle for control. With a heavy sigh, she nods. "I don't want to lose you forever, Weston. If that means I have to accept your life as it is, then I will," she replies, with a vulnerability Weston rarely sees in his mother. Weston nods, knowing this is the closest thing to reconciliation they can have for now. With a promise to stay in touch, Weston leaves, relieved to have closed that chapter. Over time, the relationship between Weston, Serena, and Elowen grows stronger. They have learned to support each other, and though there are still challenges, they have found a way to face them together. Weston has left behind his life of unchecked ambition, and now devotes all his time to being a good father and partner. One day, while they are all together in the garden, Weston looks at Serena with a smile. "You know, I never thought I could have all of this. After everything that happened, I thought it was too late to start over. Serena looks at him, filled with love and gratitude. It's never too late, Weston. What matters is that we're here now, the three of us together. That's what's really important. Elowen, who had been playing nearby, runs over to them and throws herself into her father's arms. "Daddy, Mommy," she yells with a radiant smile. "Let's build a dollhouse." Weston and Serena laugh, sharing a moment of pure joy. As they play with Elowen, Weston and Serena feel that they have finally found the peace and happiness they had long sought. The family that once seemed impossible to create is now a reality, and together they know that, no matter what comes, they will face the future as a true family, leaving behind the shadows of the past for good. Thank you for joining us on this emotional and heartfelt journey. The story of Weston, Serena, and Elowen has shown us that, even when the path is full of challenges, love and family always find a way to prevail. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. We'll see you in the next episode, where we'll continue exploring the power of second chances and the strength of family bonds. Until then, remember, it's never too late to rebuild what time tried to tear apart.